Greetings and salutations, travelers of the internet. Welcome to the Lit Round Table. I'm Anna.
And I'm Joseph, and we'll be your wise or not so wise mentors in today's audio adventure into all things storytelling.
Welcome back!
Welcome to 2022.
Season 2, Episode 1. Here we go.
Yeah. So there's a lot has happened
Yes.
since we recorded one of these, and like a lot of stuff that we've watched and read and played for me.
Cool.
And some time at home, sick. So more opportunities to read and play and watch things. So we're going to talk about all the normal stuff, like what we've been watching, reading, playing. But today, the topic, if you couldn't tell by the title when you clicked on the link for this, is we're going to be talking about the Amazon Lord of the Rings show, which we just got a title reveal, like, what was that, 7 days ago? As at the time of recording this anyway. It is going to be called Rings of Power. So, love it. So we're going to be talking about what we know so far about the show, and what we're going to speculate a little bit about what we think we'll see in season 1, and things we want to see, things we definitely don't want to see. Yeah, so it'll be good. Yeah. But first, we'll cover the usual stuff, unless Anna looks like she has something to add.
I just have a little bit of housekeeping that I want to put in the front of our usual fun stuff.
Cool.
We are launching a Patreon, which is very exciting.
Yeah. Good call. We want to bring that up.
So you won't see any change as far as like content goes here, whether you're listening on YouTube or on any of the podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to the podcast, that will still be available. Same schedule that you're used to. But we do want to put it out there so that people that want to support us can. So we'll have 3 different tiers to start off with some different like engagement opportunities. We're still hashing that out a little bit, but I think tentatively the plan will be like, no matter how you're supporting us, you'll get voting rights on like not every episode, but we want to like allow you to contribute some ideas for like topics that we might talk about, and book titles. And so we're still like hashing out some of that, but that's one thing you can participate in on the Patreon.
And just to clarify, book titles that we may read for the read-along.
Yes, good clarification. Thank you. Yeah, so just some opportunities for you to engage and participate as a community and support us as well, so that we can keep doing this, because we love doing it, but it would be nice
but
to
not
have
technically not technically free to do. So
right, yep. So if that's something you're interested in, we'd love to have your support and would be so thankful for that. But anyway, that's the little Patreon plug. So there will be a link to that in the description of the podcast and on YouTube. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, then without further ado, I hate to just make you keep talking, but what you been watching? What you reading?
Let's start with what I've been reading, because that's what I wrote down first.
Okay.
So for, as you know, if you've been a long-time listener, if you're a first-time listener, welcome. But I do book clubs with middle schoolers. And right now we're going through the Little House on the Prairie series by Laura Ingalls Wilder. And right now we're reading Farmer Boy, which has been very fun. I'm learning a lot.
I remember that book.
Yeah, I've read this book before, but it's been a long time. And I forgot how detailed it is about like what farming life was back in the 1800s. But
like, I remember specifically Mom reading you that book when we were going to bed.
Yep.
That was the nighttime book.
Yes. Yep. So that's been really fun. I'm also currently listening to the Rise of Kyoshi, which is an Avatar: The Last Airbender book. One of the young adult books. There's 2 books, so The Rise of Kyoshi and The Fall of Kyoshi, and they're both available for Audible members for free right now. So if you're a member of Audible, you can listen to it on Audible.
That's great to know. Are they?
Yeah.
So are they both young adult?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
They're not graphic novels; they're actual novels. So
Cool.
good for listening.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I'm about like 75% of the way through. It's been really good.
Mm-hmm.
We're also reading The Blade itself in our read along. We're almost done, so that's exciting. And I just finished reading a book of poetry by Amanda Lovelace called Flower Crowns and Fearsome Things. It was published last year. And it has some, like, if you're needing some poetry in your life to like soothe some of the wounds of 2020, it's an excellent collection. So if you've been struggling with social injustice and all that good stuff that has come out of the last 2 years, I recommend. So
Very good.
it's beautiful. So that's what I've been reading.
Mm-hmm.
My list is short compared to what
That
it
is
normally
shorter
is.
than usual.
It's because we're in a new year, and I did read some like romance novels over Christmas and like some easy reading, but I'm not currently reading them. So, and then for watching, this will be interesting because we have some overlap. So I'm gonna start with the one that I know does not overlap.
Okay.
But I've been watching Violet Evergarden. Actually, so that's an anime that you can watch on Netflix about an orphan who was like adopted by a military family, and she ends up like becoming this weapon of war. A little dark, but it's very like it's very pretty.
Yeah, the animation is beautiful. The music's
Yes.
beautiful.
And it's very compelling, and the characters are very endearing, and the story is just very like heart-wrenching. And there's 2 movies, so I watched them out of order, but I haven't watched the one I was supposed to watch first yet.
Oops.
I didn't know.
It's fine.
Because like the one was after you finish the season, it like recommends this one, which I watched, and it has like a very nice conclusion to it. And then after I finished that, it recommended another movie that went back in time, like between the 2. So, anyway, Violet Evergarden. If you're looking for a very pretty anime, it's available in Japanese or English on Netflix. So,
Very good.
yes. And now for where we're overlapping.
We'll both have things to say about these things, so
Yes.
you can go first.
Okay. So I've been watching Demon Slayer season 2, or the entertainment arc.
Yeah. It's still technically season 2.
Yeah.
Season 2, part 2 or something. Yeah.
Right. It's very good. But I don't want to spoil anything, but it's very good.
Yes.
Very
Understandable.
intense.
Demon Slayer is like one of my favorite anime, so it is very, very good. I love it. I've read this. I've already read this arc in the manga, so I know what's happening. But
Which I own the entire manga collection now because I got the collector box,
oh yeah,
which is super beautiful and exciting. But I haven't read any of it yet. And now, so my plan is to finish watching through this arc and then read all the manga. So then
there you go.
You know. And then also watching the final part of Attack on Titan, which, again, don't want to give any spoilers, but so when we finished watching it on our anime nights, I was like, man, the only way that this show can end is if everybody dies. And I'm still not convinced that that's not how it's going to end.
Yeah.
I could be right.
Definitely could.
I have not read the manga, so I don't know, but I just have a feeling that it's going to end up with like mass genocide.
I think it'll probably be bittersweet. It'll probably be kind of melancholic, like, yeah. I think it. Yeah, we'll see.
There's
Who
just
knows?
no way for it to have a really happy ending. I don't think. I don't think it's possible. But I could be
guess we'll
proven
find
very
out.
wrong. I hope
We
I'm
will
proven
find
wrong.
out.
But also watching the Book of Boba Fett, which I have a lot of thoughts about.
let's save that for last. Like, I'll give my stuff, and I'll
Okay.
end on Boba Fett, and then we can both talk about that briefly.
Okay. Okay, so we'll save Book of Boba Fett. And then I also watched season 2 of The Witcher over Christmas, which was very well done. I really liked this season. I don't know if I liked it better than season 1. I was able to track it and like understand what was happening better than season 1.
I was about to say that. It tracks easier because there's no weird
Yes.
timeline jumps in this one. So
Yes. But oh, you know what else? I watched that the animated movie. The
the Witcher prequel movie
yeah.
about Vesemir.
Which was
I
very
also saw that.
helpful.
Yeah.
I watched it after watching season 2 and I was like, oh, there's a reason they released this before season 2. Whatever. I'm just all about watching things out of order.
I guess.
Now.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know why.
It's all good. It's all
Yeah.
good.
So, yeah.
How about playing?
We're playing the One Ring RPG, which has been really fun. I'm officially a critter. I've been watching Critical Role Campaign 3,
Yep.
and I absolutely love it. And I may end up going back and watching the other 2
Dude,
campaigns, but we'll see.
so good. I think because so is that going to be all for your spiel? Okay, so just got to shout out that Legends of Vox Machina, the animated show based on Critical Role Campaign 1, comes out tomorrow as we're recording this, and I am so pumped.
I am also
I'm
very
so
excited.
ready. Because oh man, the voice actors they have cast for that show, like other than just them, is
Which
like
is incredible by itself.
top tier. Like just go through the cast list, your mind will be blown. So super excited about that. I'm probably not going to watch campaign 1 like of their videos. I'm probably just going to end up watching like the animated series and
Okay,
and
that's
then-
fair. I think I will probably do that. But I want to watch The Mighty Nine, I think. Because that's the one with Jester, right?
correct. And
Yes.
I think you will love the dynamic of the Mighty Nine. I have seen all of
Yeah.
campaign 2. It's very very good. So
Yeah.
yeah, have fun with that one. So good.
Well, I watched the Exandria Unlimited series
Right.
from this summer, and that was so fun because Matthew Mercer. Sorry, I don't know if
Oh,
he goes by Matt.
he goes
by either.
yeah,
Okay,
he does. Yeah.
he gets to play as a character, and it is so fun to watch him just like enjoy. Not that he doesn't enjoy himself when he's DM or GM,
Different kind of enjoyment.
but it's very different. It was nice to see him just like cut loose and like have fun with a specific character for a while. But
Yep.
So if you're into Dungeons and Dragons or watching RPGs and you haven't started to enjoy Critical Role, highly recommend.
So anyway, Critical Role Campaign 3 is also on my watch list. So boom, there's my first watch thing. I'm also watching Demon Slayer and Attack on Titan, like you said, and I also watched Witcher Season 2. So lots of overlap on our lists there.
We have very similar interests, so I don't know why that would happen.
Right. Oh, we finished watching Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood.
We did, which was that ended
That was
so
very good.
wonderful. Yeah.
I liked watching that again. That was a good time.
It's very intense. But
Which,
the ending is so good.
Which reminds me of the show that we're currently watching together, which is Arcane.
Oh,
which
yeah.
Hope and I have already seen, but you have not seen. So
Right.
we're watching Arcane on Netflix, and that has been a good time too. So we've only got the last arc, or act. So 3 more episodes on that one, which there is a second season coming. It's confirmed.
Nice. That's good.
Okay, so that's watching. For reading, I am currently on book 6 of The Wheel of Time, which is The Lord of Chaos.
Nice.
I'm not gonna lie, I might take a brief break from Wheel of Time after this one. It's not that it's getting dull, although I've heard that some of the books between this one and the last couple that Brandon Sanderson writes they're called the slog. So maybe I won't notice as much because I'll be doing audiobooks most likely, and it's my first time reading them, so maybe I won't notice it as much. But yeah, we'll see. I think I just need a brief break, but I'll be like almost halfway through, which is
Yeah.
really crazy to say. Being like 6 books deep, I'm only like halfway through. Not
Yeah.
even, because there's also a prequel novel that I also need to read. But anyway,
It's a big commitment.
that's where I'm at with the Wheel of Time. It is a really big commitment. I need to take a break from it though, so I can just actually like read other things or listen to other things.
Yeah.
Also, the Blade itself for a read along, and for playing. So while I was homesick because my wife and I both caught COVID, unfortunately. We had avoided it for the longest time, hadn't caught it yet, and finally caught it.
Yeah.
I mean, we both work with the general public, so shocker there. So
Honestly, shocking that you hadn't caught it sooner.
I know, right? Yeah. But anyway, while I was home, like it was very mild. Hope and I are both vaccinated, so we both had mild symptoms. It wasn't terrible. We roughed it out at home. But while I was home, I got to play through and beat some games that I'd been meaning to beat. So I finished Horizon Zero Dawn on PS4, and I also beat Detroit Become Human, which they're both older, but they're both very good. Horizon Zero Dawn is like an open world exploration game where it's like apocalyptic future, but you're fighting these robots that are like dinosaur robots. It's really interesting. And they actually give an explanation for it that makes sense, which, yeah, it was really interesting.
Nice.
So there's that. And Detroit Become Human is kind of like a choose your own adventure type thing. I don't think they can call it that for copyright reasons, but it's basically a choose your own adventure game. So if you're interested in that and like making choices and like moral dilemmas and stuff, it's a futuristic type of game where there are androids that have been built that are like super, like they're very human, like similar. It's basically iRobot, but but better. And no Will Smith, unfortunately, but it's very good. It's like exploring the ideas of like at what point does AI actually become a life form, and kind of like them trying to get rights for themselves. It's very interesting. So if that sounds interesting to you, it's on PS4. Check it out. Or PS5. It's probably compatible with that as well. And once I beat those games, I had started the Final Fantasy VII remake, which Hope and I had gotten for Christmas from one of her brothers. I only made it through like the tutorial missions, so I'm not super deep in that. But that was super fun, and I can definitely tell that it's made by the same studio that makes Kingdom Hearts because the gameplay is very similar.
Interesting.
So yeah, and there's still the One Ring RPG, of course, which we took a brief break from for holidays and stuff, but we are going to be going through that once again. And the second edition of the core rulebook is coming out soon. It's already been released for the people that donated to the Kickstarter for it. But I believe it's going to be available for the general public soon. So I will definitely have to pick that up once that comes out, because I want to see what tweaks they've made to some rules, if they've streamlined anything. So yeah.
Very cool.
Quickly, just because we could probably make this its own podcast topic, but we're going to briefly talk about the Book of Boba Fett. So the Book of Boba Fett, at the time of recording this, they just released, it was episode 5, right? I think it's 5.
So. It's called The Return of the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Is
And
the name
so
of the
because
episode.
it was basically episode 1 of season 3 of The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So spoiler warning for the Book of Boba Fett. If you haven't watched any of it yet, skip ahead. Don't ruin it for you if you're planning on watching it. If you're not
we've
planning
only
on
told
watching
you
it,
the name of. Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't talk over you.
Yeah.
We only gave the name of the episode title, which you can see when you look at the list. So.
Yeah.
But from this point forward, mini spoiler alert.
Yes, because we're going to talk about it. So, episode 5, in my opinion, was the best episode of this entire show so far, and Boba Fett wasn't even in it.
Yeah. I feel a little torn because there are parts about the first 4 episodes that I do like.
Oh yeah,
Like,
for
I'm
sure.
very fascinated by Boba Fett's relationship with the Tusken Raiders. I'm very sad that that ended the way that it ended. But there are things about it that just, I don't know. There's something about the vibe that is just a little off because it's set on Tatooine, and for the most part, I think that they stay pretty true to like the gritty, oppressive nature of Tatooine. But then there's like the biker gang that he
Yeah,
recruits
the Vespa gang.
with the
Yep.
brightly colored. It's weird. That part was weird for me. So I was like, this doesn't feel like Tatooine. I don't know what this feels like, but. And then like the body modification crew, which I guess is kind of the same people. It's very weird. Not that like. I think the concept is interesting. It's just not what I expect on Tatooine because everyone's like supposed to be like dirt
It was
poor.
it was very cyberpunk.
Yeah, which
It
would
didn't
like
really fit.
right. It would fit perfect on like Coruscant or like some of those like bigger city worlds, but on this like weird moisture farming community that's like I don't know. It just doesn't fit very well.
It's supposed to be like a backwater, you know.
Yeah.
Tatooine's supposed to be boring. That's the whole point. That's why Luke wants to leave, you know.
Right.
But it seems like they're trying to make it more of a hub than it actually I think was intended to be.
Right.
But
And then there's like the bar owner Twi'lek lady, which I couldn't figure out why she was like not settling right for me. But I think it's because she is like skin toned.
yeah,
And most Twi'leks are like a different
brightly
color.
colored. Yeah.
Not all of them. I guess because Bib Fortuna is like kind of skin toned.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't
pale.
know. She looks too human. Her face looks too human.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can see why you think that. Yeah.
She's very pretty.
Yeah.
But she just doesn't look like a Twi'lek. She looks like a human with the head things.
Yeah. I would just say like I agree with I think I agree with everything you're saying. So it's just I want to not be on Tatooine anymore because like I'm tired of desert.
Yeah.
Okay. Because in the sequel trilogy, Rey was on Jakku, which is basically Tatooine. In the Rise of Skywalker, they end up going to like a planet that is also a desert planet, and they find that dagger thing. Like there's too many deserts. Okay, like even if you gave me a Hoth, which is still technically a desert, like scientifically, at least it would be a different color desert. You know, but I'm tired of Tatooine. I don't know.
Take us to
Like
one of the forest planets.
Yeah. So, like, I understand why the show had to start on Tatooine because that's where Boba Fett was last seen, and that's where he took out Bib Fortuna, and like you see that at the end of Mandalorian, and it's like, oh, okay, we're gonna get Boba Fett as like a crime lord, and he's gonna be like he's gonna try to take over Jabba the Hutt's empire and stuff. That's awesome. This is gonna be so cool. But I feel like all of a sudden Boba Fett has morals and he's not really a villain anymore. He's not really a villain anymore. He's like before they're kind of trying to rebrand Boba Fett as like a mob boss with a code, which is fine, but I feel like I don't know. He's like he's not willing to actually break any laws, which is interesting because we went from no disintegrations to like he's looking out for like the working class and stuff now, and it's just, I don't know, it feels bizarre to me, but
well, I think a lot of that I think they do kind of like build that up by his experience with the Tusken Raiders, because I think he's motivated by because he saw a huge injustice with them and he's like motivated to help them. because he sees that they also have a very like specific code that they're living by, and I think he can jive with that.
Yeah. And I should also say that, I mean, all of these opinions that I have could be totally blown out of the water by the last episode, and maybe everything will be better. But yeah, I agree with you that the Vespa gang, people are calling them like the Power Rangers, like whatever, like they don't belong on Tatooine. I have to like come up with a headcanon to justify why they're there. And my headcanon is that they're like the children of some rich parents. They're like that moved there from Coruscant, and
who would do that?
And they took their bikes with them, because the cost of living on Tatooine is so much lower. Obviously,
yes,
it's like the California people moving to Texas. That's
well, there's also the whole like train scene with the Tusken Raiders, and I was like, they didn't have that many speeders. Like for how many speeders that got blown up. I was like, I think we've lost track of how many there were. It was a little confusing.
I will say though that I really enjoyed the train heist though as an action scene. Yes. It was very cool, and I am like low key in love with the female Tusken Raider warrior lady. She was so cool.
Yes.
And we never saw a body, so like
it's true.
I hope she comes back because she was one of the best things about the show. So
agreed.
Like so far, and we haven't seen her. I hope she comes back. We'll see. But like so it has moments that are super cool. We got to see Tashi Station. We got to see a big Wookiee warrior that was like a gladiator and who's apparently a comic book character. Like there have been a lot of Easter eggs thrown in here that I've been seeing people talk about, but I just can't get over how did you guys make Boba Fett the least interesting character of his own show?
Right, the most interesting parts are when he's in the Bacta tank, or not Bacta, the Bacta tank, because then he's in flashbacks with the Tusken Raiders, and that part's really interesting. But mostly because of the Tusken Raiders.
I think part of the show's problem is that people wanted the show that is The Mandalorian to be the Boba Fett show, and so that itch has already been scratched now. So they're trying to find a place for Boba Fett. And I'm just not. We'll see if they can stick the landing, but I'm not like 100% sold. It's not as good as Mandalorian in my opinion. It's not bad. It's just not as good as Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So, so that's our take. But new episode next week, and it's the last episode of the series.
Oh,
so.
Is it? Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't realize they were only getting 6.
It's only 6. So,
one thing about this last episode, so the Return of the Mandalorian. I just want to know how a Naboo starfighter ended up on Tatooine. I don't understand logistically how that happened.
Yeah, I forgot. Actually, I forgot to mention the last episode is called "The Return of the Mandalorian," and so the whole reason why we're like talking about this is because it was the best episode so far, and Boba Fett's not in it. It's almost all. Well, no, it's not even almost. It is all just the Mandalorian doing stuff, picking up from the last season of Mandalorian. So. But it was watching him rebuild the N1 starfighter was like watching one of those. It's like it was almost like it was a car show. All of a sudden, they're like rebuilding a hot rod. You know, it was super cool. There were some cameos from some droids from a specific droid from Jedi Fallen Order, the video game.
Oh, okay.
And I love that droid so much. It's so cute. It's the one
Which one?
It's the one with the little like chicken legs that like walks around.
BD.
It's a little tiny.
She calls him
BD. Yeah.
He's very cute.
Oh, he's so cool. I love that droid.
Yeah.
So that's fun. There's some stuff going down. We're learning some more backstory about like the Darksaber. We're learning more. Like it was basically just a Mandalorian episode. Yeah. Which was so good. It was so good, and it was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard.
And I know she did a great job.
They need to just give her own trilogy. Like they
seriously
need to,
though,
because she's directed some really good episodes of Mandalorian, and that was an excellent episode. Like she clearly knows what Star Wars is about, and they need to just give her more stuff to do because dang, she's kicking butt.
Totally agree. Totally.
But yeah, so that's Book of Boba Fett. So.
Well, and okay, talking about the deserts, the Kenobi show is also going to be set on Tatooine, I assume.
Oh,
for
you're
most of it.
right.
So it's going to be more desert. But it'll be Obi-Wan
Dang
Kenobi,
it.
so it'll be okay.
I hope so,
And it's only
dude.
like
That's
4
what I
episodes.
thought about. That's what I thought about Boba Fett. Okay, well, I hope it's okay. I think that the Wookiee might be in that show, to be honest with you, because apparently the Wookiee's name is like Black Chrysanthemum. He's like a gladiator Wookiee. Apparently, in the comics that he's from, him and Ben Kenobi have an encounter on Tatooine, and that's how he gets like the scar on his head because Kenobi like cuts him with the lightsaber.
Oh,
So maybe they'll interact with each other in that show.
interesting.
Who knows?
Interesting.
But anyway, so we'll come back to that. We can touch back on that in a future podcast. But
Probably
now
the next
we
one,
gotta
because that's when the show will be done.
yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But for now, let's switch gears from Star Wars, one of our favorite franchises, to our other favorite franchise, Lord of the Rings.
So excited.
Yeah. It's a great day on the podcast when we get to talk about our two favorite IPs. So
For real.
so yeah. So just a brief overview for those of you that haven't been paying attention. Overview of what's going on right now with the Lord of the Rings. So in 2017, Amazon bought the rights for Lord of the Rings for a cool $250 million. And it is going to end up being over $1 billion investment overall, because it is going to have at least 5 seasons.
Oh, I didn't know
that makes
that.
that makes it the most expensive TV show ever produced.
That is a huge commitment. Like, that's a huge time commitment and money commitment for Amazon to put down.
It really is. That's a incredible budget. Like, there should be, like, with that kind of budget, you expect something to be like flawless. So I guess we'll see. Like, people are going to have really high expectations for this thing just based on the budget alone. So I hope it's the theme of this episode is please don't suck. like I'm excited but nervous, but really excited. Okay, anyway. So yeah, at least 5 seasons. So they have been filming in New Zealand for season 1. That's confirmed. However, for season 2, I heard that they're moving production to the UK. Unfortunate. I wish they would have kept filming it in New Zealand, because like that's a huge part of New Zealand's film industry is these Lord of the Rings movies. But I don't know what the backstory is for that. I saw in articles that for season 2, production is moving to UK. Maybe that'll change. Also, feel free to fact check all this all you want and correct me if I'm wrong. But
Are they moving to the UK because of like structural needs? Like, are they hoping to use?
I don't know. It could have been budget issues. It could have been.
I don't think it'd be budget issues, but I suppose it could have been.
Right. With Bezos's wallet, yeah, they shouldn't have to worry about a budget issue. But maybe it's a logistic issue. Maybe it's COVID related. I don't know. Maybe
or it could
New Zealand.
The Lord of the Rings were written in the UK. Maybe they felt like they needed to do some.
Yeah, maybe that's true.
There.
But anyway, also, in addition to season 1 being filmed in New Zealand, which is already exciting, it has been confirmed that Howard Shore is the musical composer.
That alone could make me cry.
Get pumped. Get excited.
Oh.
So that means we're going to be hopefully seeing some musical motifs tying back into like the original trilogy. Like, I really hope that we get some cool stuff there.
Yeah.
There was, like I said earlier in the episode, there was a title reveal for the show that they came out with, and it is called Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. And we know that the show takes place in the Second Age of Middle-earth, so it takes place before all of the events of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings by like thousands of years.
But that doesn't mean we won't see some familiar characters, because
Correct.
some of the elves have been around for a very long time.
This is correct. So, and by the way, with that title reveal video, if you haven't seen that yet, definitely go check it out, because that was all practical effects.
It is beautiful.
everyone thought that was CGI, and they were like, "Oh, that CGI looks cheesy." But then they came out with the behind the scenes video, and they actually like it was all practical effects.
And it was beautiful.
Like I'm sure there might have been some digital enhancement happening, but
Sure.
the fact that they actually filmed them like casting a metal like you'll have to check it out. It's super cool. But anyway.
Yeah.
So speaking of familiar faces, we do. This is like the only one that I've been able to find that is an official casting. We do know for sure that Galadriel is in the show and has been cast. So familiar face.
Which makes sense because in the title reveal video, she kind of gives. It's not exactly the same, but it's a very similar monologue to what you see at the beginning of The Fellowship of the Ring by Peter Jackson. So. And
I do believe that is the actress for Galadriel that is doing that voiceover in the title.
Which would make the most sense.
Right. I don't have her name written down, but that's on Google, IMDb, all that stuff. You can look that up. And this is a fun fact that'll make you feel really old, Anna. Did you know that Cate Blanchett was 30 at the time of filming Lord of the Rings?
Ooh. I did not know that. And it does make me feel old. Thank you.
And I am the age that Sean Astin was. So.
What?
Yeah.
He was only 20. Wait, how old are you? 28?
27.
You're about to be 28. Wow.
Yep.
Wild. Man, what have we done with our lives?
I know, right?
Nothing.
We're talking about them and how they live their lives. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so. This is the fun part where we get to speculate on what we think we're going to see in the show. So if you came here just to hear like what we know so far and you want absolutely no spoilers going in about what this is going to be about or any kind of plot points whatsoever, some of this that we're going to talk about is most definitely spoilers if it pops up in the show, because there's some like really big monumental moments in Middle-earth history that I think are going to be covered in the show. And there could be some like plot twists and stuff. So if you're not interested in having anything spoiled, peace out. Get out of here. But if you're,
we were
if you've
so
made
glad
this,
to have you.
Yeah, but leave.
For your own enjoyment purposes.
Right. If you're still listening, I think that means you're probably, well, either just a fan of us, or you're my mother-in-law, or you are a huge Lord of the Rings fan. And in which case you already know some of these plot points. So some of this you'll already know, so it won't be like spoilers.
Honestly, some of this will be spoilers for me because I have not read all of the Silmarillion. But
that's fair.
That's okay.
And
I'm here for it. I'm not bothered by being spoiled on some of this stuff because.
Right. And here's the thing, you don't actually have to read the whole Silmarillion, because everything that takes place in the Second Age, like in the Silmarillion, is actually in a section called the Akalabeth, which is fairly short, actually. Let's see. I have the Silmarillion in front of me as well. So, yeah, it's in my book. Copies will vary. 12 pages.
Oh.
For Akalabeth, which is basically outlining the rise and fall of Numenor. So,
which makes sense that it wouldn't have a lot of space in the Silmarillion because the Silmarillion is mostly about the elves. Fair?
Yeah, the Akalabeth is actually not technically in the Silmarillion, because before that even comes up, it says here ends the Silmarillion. So
okay. Interesting. So it's like an appendices almost.
Yeah, it's like bonus content. It's like an epilogue. Because there's also a section called the Third Age and the Rings of Power in the War of the Rings. So, which is basically just a brief overview of the Lord of the Rings books. So, anyway, if you're interested in reading that, 12 pages in my book anyway. So it's pretty short. So you can read that for a cool little blurb on what might happen this season. So the Second Age of Middle-earth really is, like, the focal point of the Second Age is Numenor. So, basically, men reach Numenor in, like, year 32 of the Second Age, And then at the end of the Second Age is the War of the Last Alliance, taking out Sauron right before the Third Age begins. And those are Numenorians who have been displaced because Numenor sinks. So, again, spoilers. So there's a lot of stuff. There's like so much ground to cover because the Second Age is 3,441 years long. So that's a lot of ground to cover.
Yes, for sure.
But they've got 5 seasons at least. And since a lot of the characters are either Elvish or Numenorian, they live for a crazy long time. So they could do some like pretty huge time jumps and not change actors. So I think it's conceivable that we will see like really big like time periods portrayed in the show. So as far as speculation on like where they'll start, I wasn't really sure, but I think judging by the title of the show, which is The Rings of Power, I'm really thinking we're going to see Anatar showing up in Eregion to make the Rings of Power with Celebrimbor, who is an elf who lives in that region, and he crafted the 3 elvish Rings of Power. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with the lore, Anatar is actually Sauron in disguise, and he shows up and instructs them on how to make these Rings of Power, and that's where you get the whole, like, 9 rings for mortal men doomed to die, 7 for the dwarves in their halls of stone, 3 for the elvish kings, and 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, blah, 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 blah. You know, we've all heard that.
You know the poem.
That's the whole thing. So I really think they're going to start there with like creating the Rings of Power. But I also think that, so I think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see the War of Sauron and the Elves, where he eventually will kill Celebrimbor and take some of the Rings of Power, like the 9 obviously, and some of the dwarven ones, and the elves will keep their 3 because Sauron actually didn't have a hand in making those. I think we're going to see that take place, and I think that's going to be an opportunity for some particularly brutal moments, because what he does to Celebrimbor is pretty metal, honestly.
Yeah.
Brutally kills him. But that's going to be a really dramatic moment. Oh, I should also mention, though, going into this, that, okay, a lot of people were nervous that they were going to make the show like Game of Thrones as far as like violence and nudity and sex and stuff. But we also saw the rating for the show is, I think it was TV 14. So we are not going to get any, well, I can't say any, but we're not going to get any super graphic sex scenes like Game of Thrones.
Right.
Which pleases a lot of fans, because that is not what Lord of the Rings is about.
Fan.
Yeah, that is not, in my opinion, what Lord of the Rings is about.
No, not at all. So it's really,
anyway,
I was so excited to see that. But I also want to say that with the Wheel of Time series coming out last year, that first season, I was very encouraged by how, and I'm not familiar with the book, so I don't know how like true to the books it was or whatever, but the Lord of the Rings show isn't following, like it's following source material, but it's not like a novel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they'll have a little more leeway as far as that goes. But I was very encouraged by how well done the Wheel of Time show was, that they would give the Lord of the Rings show its due respect as well. So I was very encouraged by that. And the Wheel of Time show also wasn't very graphic. Like there was some sex, but there wasn't, and maybe a little nudity, but not a lot.
Yeah. You knew what was happening.
Yes,
you know,
but it was very fade to
but
black.
they didn't show it. Yeah. So that's an area where it's okay to tell, not show, in my book. So
Yes.
Anyway, usually you wouldn't do that in storytelling, but you can get away with it with sex scenes. So as far as the Lord of the Rings show goes, I agree with you that they've got more creative license. Sorry, they've got more creative license with this because it's not a fully fleshed out story of like character arcs and like all they have are major plot points of events that they need to stick to. And will they stick to it 100%? Probably not. I'm just going to brace myself for that and accept
Right.
it going in. Because every adaptation has to make changes. Like, I get it.
But
What are you about to say?
could we see Tom Bombadil?
I think some people are speculating that we will. It's possible.
Oh, really? I mean, he's definitely around.
Absolutely.
I just think it would be supremely funny if he showed up in this show. Because he really, like, we could probably do a whole episode about the Tom Bombadil theories. But
oh, yeah.
I think it would be very funny if he showed up in the show. I don't know what purpose he would serve, but it would be funny.
That was actually something that we were floating about, like a possible Patreon subscription perk, was that once a month we would come out with a special like deep dive Lord of the Rings lore video that would be available to only Patreon subscribers. So,
Which, yeah.
if you're interested
So
in
the
that,
Patreon thing will be fluid for a while until we figure out exactly what we want to do.
until we really land on what we're doing. But
yeah.
anyway, so I really think that that's where it's going to start, is we're going to see the Rings of Power forged, and we're going to see Anatar backstab the world and reveal himself as Sauron. I really think that'll probably be like the season 1 finale. Anatar is Sauron. We get to hear like the incantation, like, because also we're gonna get sexy Sauron in this show. I'm just gonna say it
we
now.
better.
Because, okay, and let me explain myself. Because he is described, when he is Anatar, he's a shapeshifter. Like, he's not just a flaming eyeball. That's not even actually book canon, the flaming eyeball thing.
Right.
He is described as being like very fair and beautiful, and he kind of presents himself as being a representative of the Valar, which are the deities of this world. And that's how he tricks them into letting him help them make these rings of power, because that's how they're going to try to preserve their magic in the world, because it's all starting to fade. So I'm really looking forward to seeing some like clever and deft like social maneuvering. I want to see Sauron not just be a flaming eyeball that's like this malicious force. I want to see him,
or like a massive brute force, like we see at the
a giant metal spiky. Yeah.
Which is very intimidating. It served its purpose well, but it's time to see another side of him. Agreed.
Right, because he is a shapeshifter, and that's just a form that he took. When he wants to be intimidating, that's the form he takes. When he wants to be like seductive and like he's trying to win you over, he's trying to be charismatic, he chooses a different form. So at least at this time in the timeline, he can do that. So I think we're gonna see that in the first season. At least I really hope we do. I really hope that that's not just like a prologue for season 1. I hope we actually get to see it happen.
Does that actually happen in the Second Age?
Yes.
Okay, then that would make sense. I did have a question. So when you were talking about Celebrimbor, and like his tragic end, there was a video game?
Yeah. So the games are Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, and those are made by Warner Brothers. They are really good games. They do play it a little fast and loose with the lore. Like they're made so that they can fit into the Lord of the Rings lore for like the movies. Like they can fit into that, but they're not canon, obviously. But they can fit in with the movie lore. There's some timeline stuff that gets janky if you're trying to fit it into book lore, but they're very fun games.
Yeah.
They're very fun games. And one of the main characters actually is like the ghost of Celebrimbor.
Right.
And he's the he's the elf that's responsible for making the Rings of Power, and he was betrayed by Sauron and killed. his whole family was
Sauron the
killed.
Deceiver.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I'm really excited about the potential to see that. Beyond that, there's a ton of stuff that happens after that, because once the rings are made and Anatar is revealed to be Sauron, then he retreats back to Mordor. We see the war between Sauron and the elves, and the area where Celebrimbor is called Eregion and is totally laid waste. He overruns Eriador. He kind of he really kind of wipes the floor with the elves. Not gonna lie, until Numenor shows up and basically saves them. So the ruler of Numenor shows up with a huge navy and defeats Sauron, and he has to retreat back to Mordor, which has, after that happens, is kind of a period of relative peace. So I'm thinking season 1 is Forging the Rings of Power. Season 2, war between Sauron and the elves. Numenor comes in and defeats him, and he has to retreat. And then maybe we see a time jump, and then we see some crazy Numenor action. Because Numenor is like the height of the power of like the race of men. It's like the same people that Aragorn is descended from, and all of the Gondorian people. So,
So we should technically see young Elrond
correct.
and his
And
brother.
maybe, right, and his twin brother Elrose, who they're both half elven. However, Elrose chose mortality, and Elrond chose immortality, being an elf. So Elrose does eventually die of old age, but he lives like crazy long.
But he's part of the line of Numenor, right?
Right.
Or is that separate?
It's his bloodline that allows some of the men, or some of, not just the men, that allows some
Numenorians.
of, yeah, that allows some of them to become like the Dunedain, and they live for crazy long because they have some elvish ancestry, and he's where that comes from.
I'm excited for that business. I really hope we get some Elrose stuff.
That would be very
I
cool.
would honestly just love some like Elrond and Celebrian stuff too, and their twins, because I miss them in the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I don't know how it would fit in the story, but
They are born in the Second Age. We
Right.
could see children, like we could see little kid Arwen.
that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Even
Agreed.
just like a little bit, like acknowledging, like, you know, these young versions of the old people we see later.
Yeah. Speaking of young versions of people we see later, this technically kind of counts for that. So I'm really hoping that we see who becomes a ring wraith.
Ooh.
That would be cool. I'm here for that.
Yes.
Because the ring wraiths show up at around year 2251. So this is after the whole war between Sauron and the elves. So then he has to fall back after Numenor kicks his butt and takes him out. He has to fall back. He has to try to rebuild his forces. And I think at this time, there's like a lot of political division in Numenor. And like there's a lot of like rebellion happening, and nobody can really agree on what they need to be doing. As is the case with most like large superpowers in a world. So then that's when the ring wraiths start to pop up. So and things like black Numenorians, which are basically just evil, corrupted Numenorians that Sauron has seduced into his service. So I really hope we get to see Sauron kind of handpick some powerful individuals to give the 9 rings of power to, and we get to see like who becomes the Witch King. Who is that dude? That would be super cool. I don't think that would be something we would see in like season 1. It could surprise me, but that'd be super cool.
Is it notated in the lore anywhere who it is? Like, do we have a name? Or is it
No,
just
not for the Witch King. We actually do for the one directly beneath the Witch King.
That's so funny.
The next in command.
Typical
Name
Tolkien.
is yeah, his name is Kamul, and he is supposed to be an Easterling. So we do know one of them, but there are some of them that I think are for sure Numenorians that got suckered into Sauron's pyramid scheme. His MLM, the Barad-dûr MLM. So
I think pyramid scheme is better.
yeah.
More true to Sauron's end goal.
Yeah.
It's not multi-level. It's one level. Get me to the top. I don't care who I have to step on.
I also hope that we get to see Umbar, which, if you don't know, from Return of the King, that is where the Corsairs come from, in Return of the King, and at this point, it was actually one of the largest Numenorian colonies settlements. So
I didn't know that.
yeah, it used to be just all Numenorians over there until it got kind of a reputation for being a seedy, piratey place after the fall of Numenor. And yeah, eventually there is just straight up civil war in Numenor. And I think that is when we're going to start to see Elendil and Isildur come into the show. And because they're kind of leading a faction of Numenor that is kind of staying true to how they originally were. And there's this new faction that wants to make war with the gods for immortality and all this crazy stuff.
Well, anything with Isildur would have to be towards the end of the show.
Yeah,
right?
like the
because
I would
Isildur
say
marks the start of the Third Age, doesn't he?
the war, the Battle of the Last Alliance. That is Isildur cutting the ring from Sauron's hand and taking it is kind of what marks. Well, actually, I think Isildur getting killed is what marks the end of or the beginning of the Third Age.
Right.
Because he cuts the ring from Sauron's finger, and then he gets eventually killed in the river, in the Galadan fields. But yeah, I think that the fall of Numenor is definitely endgame for the show. Unless they decide to bleed into the Third Age. They're starting in the Second Age. That doesn't mean they can't keep going if the show is super duper popular and come into some of the Third Age stuff. That could be cool too, but I'm not going to go into that. That's a whole other, oh boy. But
well, that's true. That's true. There's a lot of time, because when you say the Third Age, I immediately think Lord of the Rings, but there's a lot of time in the Third Age between Isildur dying and Aragorn becoming king.
Oh yeah.
There's a ton of time in there.
All of the conflict in Arnor between the Witch King, when he first becomes known as the Witch King of Angmar, you could actually see the war between Angmar and the Kingdom of Arnor. You could see the actual ending of the line of Isildur, because it didn't actually end when Isildur died. The guy still had kids and stuff. Right. The line of kings didn't end until much later. So there's a lot.
And it ended, but obviously Aragorn is a descendant. So it wasn't gone. It was just in hiding.
It was right. It was believed to have been ended. At least the Gondorian was ended. Yes. But Arnor, which is the sister kingdom, still had their line, which was still intact to Sauron's dismay. But yeah, I think that the fall of Numenor is definitely endgame. And I'm really excited again to see Sauron play more of the role of the manipulator, because Sauron is the main reason why Numenor falls. And it's because he does eventually get captured by the Numenorians, because he sees the Numenorians show up in a giant fleet with a huge army, and he doesn't even fight them. He just surrenders immediately and offers his services as an advisor to the ruler. And wonder how that went. So
he
basically turned all of the upper ruling class of Numenor into Morgoth worshippers, and they started doing human sacrifice, and that's why and they tried to sail to the Undying Lands to take immortality. And that is why Numenor eventually gets sunk.
Which is fascinating because in The Lord of the Rings, Denethor, like the Steward of Gondor, has like a romanticized version of that in his head. Which makes sense because he was being poisoned by the Palantir that had Sauron on the other side.
He might have more of like a romanticized version of like Elendil and Isildur because they didn't buy into that. Like they were leading the faction against that behavior.
Right, but when Faramir's not dead yet, and he goes to like set a fire, which I think he thought Faramir was dead, but he was also going to kill himself. Like he had set up the pyre with Faramir and himself, and he was going to end it.
Yeah.
And he's like going on about the kings of old and blah blah blah, having a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
So
he said, "We will burn like the heathen kings of old." Yeah, that's definitely a callback to like human sacrifices that were done in Numenor, which eventually the main deity Eru or Iluvatar sees what's happening and just sinks Numenor. Just like, nope, hard reset. No more of that. And also, we're going to restructure the world so that Valinor can no longer be reached by physical means. So, yeah. So I think if we got to see that also, that would be pretty epic. That would be a lot of visual effects budget, but
yeah, it'd be cool though.
Or like a movie. If we could see like kind of like 2012, the movie, like
I didn't see that movie.
It'll be like 5 seasons and a movie, and the movie will be the fall of Numenor, and it's going to be all about Elendil and their group escaping.
Yeah.
And we would get to see Sauron kind of go down with a ship because he's on Numenor when it goes down. And it's kind of unknown how he and the Ring were able to escape, but I think it's just kind of accepted that he spiritually like whisked the ring away and ran away back to Mordor just because spooky Maya powers. But after that point, he is unable to assume a fair form because the destruction of Numenor destroyed that fair form he was in, so he can no longer do that after that point. So that's when we really just get like the Sauron that we see at the Battle of the Last Alliance.
In the prologue of the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah. So that's after the downfall of Numenor, and the Gondor people that are there, like Elendil and Isildur, are remnants of Numenor that escaped and settled in Middle Earth. So these are all things that I really hope that we get to see. I'm nerding out so much, and I have talked a lot. Anna, tell me some things that you're excited about seeing.
Well, I was just going to ask, is it possible that we'll see Gandalf in the Second Age? When did the wizards come in?
Right, that is on my list of things that I better not see.
Okay.
Because they definitely do not show up until the Third Age.
Okay. See, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Technically they exist, but not on Middle Earth.
Right. If they want to do like a cameo of them, like when they're just talking about Meyer and stuff, that's fine. I just better not see old man Gandalf. He better still be like fair formed Olorin.
Oh yeah, no, I don't. I hope I do not see Ian McKellen. Even though I would love to see Ian McKellen, but I don't think he should be in this.
He shouldn't, unless the only time I should see Ian McKellen as Gandalf in this is if it's like the beginning of the Hobbit movies where he's like telling a story to Bilbo or something.
Yeah, I don't think Ian McKellen is slated for the show.
I don't think so either.
I think, but we could be wrong.
Yeah.
I'm just really excited. And I'm really hoping that there's going to be some new Lord of the Rings merch because I was too young to like fully understand and appreciate merch at the time that the movies were originally coming out. I mean, we had so many toys, which was awesome. But I would like more like
clothes and
adult merchandise.
Yeah.
You know, things that an adult person can enjoy. Like the toys are cool, but
beanies.
And I love the toys, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful for that. I kind of want to see the Valar a little bit. I know they're not as involved in the Second Age.
Yeah, that would definitely be more First Age
I
territory, but
know, but they're technically still around. They could be just like, but you know what? It would end up being like the like whenever you see Greek gods in shows or whatever, and they're like in a
yeah.
council room and they're all sitting there, blah blah blah.
Yeah, and of course Liam Neeson would be the main one.
Yes.
Like,
Was that the Percy Jackson movies that happened in?
maybe, but it was also the Wrath of the Titans or Clash of the Titans, whatever it was.
Yeah.
The Release the Kraken. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's Zeus. He's Zeus in that.
Yeah. I don't know. I have a lot of like feels about the Valar, but also it's fine if they're not there.
Yeah.
But they should be
I wouldn't
mentioned, I would think. Right?
Some of them I think well, okay, here's the other thing. There are some things that they legally can't mention.
Oh.
For like copyright issues because they can only like they have the license for Lord of the Rings, which fortunately the Lord of the Rings includes all of these all the appendices in the back of the Lord of the Rings. However,
Interesting.
which is how they can get away with doing a show about the Second Age. But there's not
No rights for the
we
Silmarillion.
we can't get any Silmarillion stuff in there, which we could see some of the Valar mentioned, like we could see Elbereth because she is mentioned in Lord of the Rings, who's like the Valar that the elves most cherish. She's like
Of stars.
she kindled the stars, and they love Elbereth, and she's married to Manwë, who is the wind guy who like made the eagles and stuff. So,
I
I
forgot
don't.
about the Silmarillion drama.
There's a lot of Silmarillion drama.
Licensing drama, I mean.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's licensing drama there. The Tolkien estate is very close-fisted. Like they don't want to relinquish the rights for things.
You know what?
Which I like. Part of me understands. But at the same time, I feel like Tolkien would have given the rights over because that's kind of the spirit that he had. He wanted to see other people
Tell stories.
do stuff, which is why he originally did it. I mean, he also probably didn't anticipate anyone being able to actually do it, but
Right. I'm sure originally when he signed off on those rights, he was like, okay.
good luck.
Good luck.
He was like, this will just be like some dumb like indie stage production somewhere. Like,
Yeah. I forgot about that. Okay, well, because I would really love to see this. This is first age, but Beren and Luthien, but they could allude to it, and technically that's in the appendices, I believe.
they could because
And Aragorn mentions them.
Aragorn basically recants the entire story to the hobbits in Fellowship. So, Beren and Luthien could come up. It basically, if it's mentioned in the Lord of the Rings, it's fair game. But
Right, but that's also first age. It's not second age.
right, and we know it's taking place in the Second Age. So if we do see any Beren and Luthien stuff, it would only be in like brief little snippets, probably of them explaining the story of how like Elrond and Elrose came around because they are descended from them. Yeah, the family trees in Lord of the Rings are complicated.
They are, but fascinating.
Yeah. So, anyway, yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens. And obviously, once we eventually do get a trailer, like a trailer, that'll narrow this way down as to what we're going to see in this first season and where it's going to start. Because if we see Numenorians like out of the gate, I think that we're probably not going to see the forging of the rings.
But they did the whole. I feel like the way they did the title reveal with like the forging of the letters.
Yeah, see, I agree.
Kind of like it leans into that idea that we're going to see some forgery in the show, and by forgery I mean like not
yeah
documents, but
crafting of the rings.
Yes.
And since Galadriel is confirmed as a character, I mean, she shouldn't really have that big of a role. If we're going just by the book, like by what's available in the books, but if they want to give her a bigger role, I'm all for it and I support it. because she's an awesome character.
And she was definitely there.
And I think, well, she wasn't like, well, she's given a ring of power, so yeah, it makes sense.
I
So
mean, she's around in the world. She's
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not like she hasn't been born yet. She's definitely been born.
She
She's been
was
around for a while.
around before the sun and the moon existed.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's been around a long time.
But anyway, that's first age stuff that we can't that isn't going to be in it.
Right. No, I'm just saying she's around.
Yeah,
She is present in this time period.
for sure.
So
And if we do see a lot of Galadriel, she better be pretty sus of Anatar and his gifts, because Celebrimbor is really, and the Eregian elves are really the only ones that fell for it, because everyone else was like, this guy's kind of shady. Like, no one else liked him.
yeah.
It was just Celebrimbor, the one that's descended from Feanor,
Gee.
that made the Silmarils. Kind of a problematic family there.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, so I really hope that we get to see Galadriel like throw some shade at Sauron. And
Well deserved.
yeah, I hope we get to see that, like personal shade. Like I want to see Galadriel insult him to his face. That'd be super cool.
It would.
But anyway,
And I
that's
want
what
to
we
see.
know.
I want to see more like details on the elven rings because they have like special powers.
Yeah, I hope that they really nail down what the rings actually do, because
Yeah.
the movies sure don't explain it. Basically, and you have to kind of dig for it in the books. So basically, maybe they go a different direction in the show, but in the books, basically it's explained that the power of the elves is kind of waning, and soon it's going to be the dominion of men, and men are just going to rule the world. Unfortunately, because the elves are cool.
Right.
But
which Elrond does like allude to that a few times in the movies. Like
Right.
when he's talking to Gandalf, he says things like that.
And that's why the elves are leaving Middle Earth and going to the Undying Lands, which is Valinor, which only they can reach. No one else can reach it, because the elves that are leaving to go to Valinor were there before. So, and that's like where their magic and where their power comes from. It's because that's where they're from, and it's basically it's basically heaven. Like that's the
Right.
that's the narrative purpose of Valinor.
Yes.
But the longer they're in Middle Earth, the longer that power starts to fade. Also, like, the world kind of broke at the end of the First Age. There was this big war that literally broke the continent. So, like, a lot of their power has faded. And the rings are supposed to help preserve that power, so they still have some, like, bastions of their former glory, right? Which is what you see with Rivendell and with Lothlorien. And both Galadriel and Elrond both have rings of power, and that's what those rings are doing. They're like preserving. They're like little time capsule bubbles of elvish peace and glory and all that. So that's
Right.
what those rings do. But that's kind of what Anatar uses, aka Sauron, to sucker Celebrimbor into agreeing to make rings of power. Like, that's his whole sales pitch. Is like, hey man, I came from Valinor. I want to show you how to make these rings of power, and when you wear them, you're going to be able to like preserve your power. Your power's not going to fade. You're not going to have to leave. It's going to be all fine. Don't worry about it. But then
Right.
once the rings are all made, he tries to make the one ring to rule them all, which is supposed to give him like subjugation over them. He's basically going for like a decapitation strike on all of these world leaders, and he's trying to put them all under his thumb, like with his psychic powers, with the one ring. So, fortunately, the Elvish rings, he didn't actually have a hand in making. Celebrimbor was responsible solely for making those. So they were able to detect what was happening before it was too late and stop it. I don't know whether that was just like taking the rings off or what, but yeah, the other rings though that Sauron definitely had a hand in making, like the 9 for the men and the 7 for the dwarves. Yeah, those are bad news. So, which we see with like the ring wraiths and how greedy they made the dwarves.
Right.
And,
Which I mean, didn't the greed of the dwarves didn't end up serving Sauron that well. It just made them die.
No, it just made them hoarders, and they just attracted dragons, and most of the rings ended up in dragon bellies. So
right, but the elven rings have like specific, like they have specific regions that they're covering. But like the is it Círdan that had the ring?
Círdan had Narya, the Ring of Fire,
which ends up being Gandalf's. He gives it to Gandalf, which comes into play when they're in Moria and he's facing the Balrog. It's like a whole thing.
Yeah, he's like trying to flex on the Balrog, and he like name drops. Yeah, I'm a servant of the secret fire.
And Elrond's ring is like the water ring, right? Because it's something to do with the river.
Actually, I think it's air.
Was it air?
I think his is air, but
see, it's been a long time.
I forget Galadriel's. You probably know.
It's Nenya.
The ring of what though?
Is it
adamant?
white? I think it's adamant.
I don't know what that means though.
I'm not really sure either, because it's not a word that like, I mean, it means something, but it's not a.
It's unclear to me. It's unclear to me whether or not those are attached to like specific powers, like elemental powers, or if it's just like artistic flair that Celebrimbor threw in. It's unclear.
Oh, maybe.
But
I always thought that Elrond's ring had control of water because of the way he controls the Fords of Bruin. Because that was actually honestly, Elrond and not Galadriel, or not Arwen or Glorfindel or whoever. It was Elrond.
Right. And that, once again, could just be like the last remnants of the power of the elves with like their magic. Because the reason why they didn't want to cross it was because that would put them in the realm where like the ring is helping like the elves keep their power in there. So that's part of the reason why the Nazgul didn't want to go in, because they knew like, oh, if we go in there, that's enemy territory and we could get lit up. And then they did.
Yep.
So anyway, that's what we know so far about the Ring of Power, the Rings of Power. I'm very excited, as you can tell. This is my bread and butter. This is my favorite. Oh, I love it. Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited too.
All right.
Yeah, well, we're excited for season 2 and to see what comes next, and season 2 of the podcast is what I mean.
Gotcha. Yep, we're very excited. So once we have more details about the Patreon, we'll drop those details. And once like a trailer comes out for this show, I'm sure we'll talk about it more then too. Hopefully we get one of those soon. Until then, go read something cool.
And we'll talk at you next time.
Later.
Bye.